Hello again, everybody. We are back with part two of the NZ Set 3 Transformation set review. We covered the styled cards in part one. If you haven't checked that out, you should. You don't have to do them in order, I guess, but recommend that video as well. We are going to go slightly out of order with this section of the set. And in sort of a review sake, it kind of makes sense to cover certain cards together. The set list is a little bit different, so you'll notice if you're paying like super good attention that the card numbers are a little out of order here, but it just kind of makes more sense to cover certain things together. So getting right into it, we've got Kami level 1. We've introduced a Kami stack in NZ3, and his first level here says, before the first turn of the game begins, you may search your life deck for Kami's Floating Island and place it into play. If this card is in your MP stack and Kami's Floating Island would be removed from the game, discard it instead. It just makes sense, right, that Kami would have his island. That's where he stays. It's with him all the time. Constant combat power. When Kami's Floating Island is in play, your opponent must deal an additional X life cards to capture a Dragon Ball where X is your current anger level. Anytime a Dragon Ball is played or captured, raise your anger 1. So just like we did with the Broly stack in NZ2, we're going to kind of cover the whole stack together and then sort of talk about it. I'm going to go right over here to level 2.
So the level 2, you may shuffle a Dragon Ball in play into its owner's life deck. If you do, raise your anchor 2 levels. And for the remainder of combat, you cannot play copies of that Dragon Ball, and either your attacks do +2 cards of damage, or you prevent 2 life cards of damage from your opponent's attacks.
When we go into level 3, the Prepared. If Kami's Floating Island is in play, you may use the effect of a Dragon Ball in play. If you do, shuffle it into its owner's life deck, and you may not play copies of that Dragon Ball for the remainder of combat. If Kami's Floating Island is not in play, search your life deck or discard pile for 1 and place it into play instead. Finally,
Lastly is Kami level 4, Guardian of Earth. Constant combat power. All of your attacks deal +X cards of damage, where X is the number of Dragon Balls in play. If Kami's Floating Island is in play, its power only affects you when entering combat.
all right, well then, to kind of go back to the beginning here, Nick, you want to take us off with this one?
So the big key with Kami is obviously the floating island gimmick. It's going to be in play, so it's going to help card advantage on both ends. Kami's floating island, when entering combat, draw a card. It affects both players. So Kami's going to care about Dragon Balls, which makes perfect sense, thematically. So your opponent has to deal additional cards to capture Dragon Balls equal to your anger, and when you play or capture a Dragon Ball, or your opponent plays or captures a Dragon Ball, raise your anger 1. So what Kami really wants to do is kind of level off of level 1, fairly quickly. Level 1 is definitely the weaker of the levels for Kami. As he levels, his powers generally go up. They do care a whole lot about Dragon Balls. When you get into level 2, shuffling a Dragon Ball in play into its owner's deck is very useful. It does raise your anger 2, which again helps with his leveling up process. But being able to play a powerful ball and then shuffle it back into your deck so that you can get it again, and so that it's not eligible for your opponent's capture, is very strong. Your attacks do +2 cards or prevent 2 cards. That's just an added bonus, obviously. The real power comes from the shuffling of the balls and the anger gain. Um, you get to level 3, so if you have the floating island in play, you can use the effect of a Dragon Ball. Obviously, there are a lot of balls that do things like draw cards, Dende balls from the top of your discard pile, Namek balls from the bottom, Earth balls from your deck. So no matter what style of ball you're playing, there's ways to draw cards and get value off of this effect. Uh, if it is not in play, then you can go put it in play. Obviously, that's a super good benefit. Kami's very good against other battlegrounds or location. So even if a battleground or location is pretty good against him, it's uh, it's very it's very easy to just get floating island back into play to get rid of your opponent's dismal or city in turmoil or something like that. And then lastly, the level 4, all your attacks do +X cards, where X is the number of balls in play. Notice it doesn't say your balls or a specific set of balls. So if both players have balls, it does count all of them. And then basically his power now says when entering combat, draw a card, and your opponent no longer gets the draw effect from Kami's Floating Island. So Again, Kami stack is very good. It's very Dragon Ball centric. You're gonna want to use it to draw a bunch of cards, and then hopefully use the card economy to outpace your opponent.
Yeah, he's unique in the sense that in being the sort of guardian of the Dragon Balls, he's kind of willing to fight for them a little bit more than your average like Dragon Ball deck would. Not just sort of like pulling a ball out, building up like all seven, and then like ending combat and winning. He wants to get a couple on the table, two, three, four, or whatever, and use them, put them back, kind of repeat that, cycling it with cards that let you search for a ball again and just kind of keep the pressure on. He just takes the Dragon Ball approach and plays it very uniquely. It lets you do something much different with the Dragon Balls than you normally would. Which takes us then into our next card, Forbidden Fusion. This is Piccolo and Kami only. You cannot win by MPPV. You may remove a Namekian Heritage ally you control and the bottom 5 cards of your discard pile from the game. If you do, then advance your main personality to Piccolo Fused, removed from the game after use. So as you can see, this card just covers the fusion of, in theory, Kami and Piccolo, but just 2 powerful Namekians into one final sort of form called Piccolo Fused. We have levels introduced in the set that we called locked levels, and they are a part of your stack and count for like MPPV conditions and stuff like that, but you cannot anger to them natively. So as we get into this next card, say you had this Piccolo level 5 in your stack, you couldn't level from 4 to 5 with anger like a normal deck. You'd have to use this card to get there. The level is locked to you until you unlock it. And that then gives us Piccolo Fused, which I'll let Nick cover.
All right, so Piccolo Fused. You may only advance to this level via the Forbidden Fusion card, as we just saw. This card's name is considered to also be Kami Fused. So, as Derek said, these are locked levels. It counts as a level 5 for your Kami or your Piccolo. You cannot win by MPPV if this is your strategy, but your opponent can only win by MPPV if they have 5 levels. So that is super beneficial. So the Piccolo kind of varies in power level all the way up to H, which is incredibly strong. And it goes all the way down to B. So you get kind of a full range of power here from Piccolo. So his power up rating is 7, which if you're declaring Tokugawa is 8, which is basically almost the entire card. And he has a constant combat power. Your opponent plays with their hand revealed. As we talked about in the previous set, your opponent playing with their hand revealed is a very powerful effect. The first time you take damage each combat, you can either raise your main personality's highest power stage or shuffle the top 4 cards of your discard pile into your life deck. So this Piccolo is very strong, and he is very good at not dying, and that's what it's about. We're going to turn, the weak Namekian attacks into stronger attacks with the power of the PAT, or we're going to rejuvenate cards back into your deck. With knowing what your opponent always has, you can set up your actions very well. This card is incredibly good. It's super fun to play, and what it also does is it doesn't kind of synergize as much with the stacks from Piccolo and Kami, so it gives you like a range of a new way to attack them. So you do your Kami deck that's going to be about shuffling balls in and all that, and then as the game progresses, okay, now you're Takami Piccolo fused here, and now you're going to be rejuving and trying to stay alive and things like that after you've already tried to get a rush head on your opponent by drawing cards with your balls.
Yeah, one other thing that's nice with this that isn't actually named on the card, it's just sort of in the rules. Piccolo Fused is a fused character. So when you use cards that say, like, if used by a fused personality, those all trigger with him. There are plenty of those, like, Vegeta's Leg Catch, or Vegeto's Leg Catch and stuff like that, that are solid cards if you can get the fused portion to go off, and you're just sort of always fused. You're not on a timer or anything like that with like you would be with Fusion Dance or Patara Earrings. I guess Patara Earrings isn't a timer, but you know what I mean. You're just sort of more safely here unless you get specifically leveled down with like a threatening position or blue energy throw or something like that. But you just kind of get to hang out here, be fused, and have a varying level of high power level, and getting it back. It works great with energy, taking a full power up once you've taken some damage once for combat. it's just a good goal for both Piccolo and Kami decks to have. And even if you're not trying to get here, even if you're not going to run like Forbidden Fusion, which I think if you're going to play this, you should like even run one. But even if you play 0 copies of Forbidden Fusion and just have this so your opponent can't MPPV against your Kami deck if they're like a 1 through 4, that's worth it alone. That takes us out of our sort of new Namekian suite here and takes us into God Key Ritual. This is the next piece of the locked levels kind of package that we introduced with this set. You cannot buy MPPV for the remainder of the game. Discard the top 5 cards of your life deck. You may advance your main personality to any level with Super Saiyan God in the title, remove from the game after use. So this one's a little more wide in that it can go to any card that has Super Saiyan God in the title. So if there's more characters than one that have that, there might be cards at some point for them. It does take 5 cards because it takes 5 other Saiyans to help you out. That's just a flavor thing, but it just gives you a cost of discarding some cards to basically get to hop to a level 5 from whatever level you're on. Which gives us Goku Super Saiyan God, the first of those cards. Nick, you want to tell us about him?
Yeah, so Goku, you can only advance this power with God Key Ritual. This is the important thing for the gods. So if your power rating is at 0 at the end of combat, lower your MP to level 1, and you may not redirect damage to allies. So that is your opponent's goal here. When you hit the god forms, they want to get you to 0. His power is Focused Energy Attack, or prevent all damage from a physical or energy attack, and draw a card.
That you get to jump to a level 5 Goku from wherever you're at. That's not new to Goku. Goku could, Goku's Farewell or something like that before. So that's not an uncommon sort of archetype for Goku. But it's not often that Goku gets to go to something that can be 150 million power level. That's huge. He gets to be in H and I for a couple levels here at the top. Focused energy, just for 4, but focused, or preventing all the damage from any kind of an attack is pretty good. Getting to draw a card of the effect power that draws you a card is always somewhat good in any capacity. This card is just super good at hitting you really hard and staying here for a long time, because it's at least going to prevent all of the damage from something once. And so you can just kind of save that for when you would use your biggest physical. He is a big threat, and he's a little bit more passive with how he applies it than some other of his counterparts might be. But you just get him here, you kind of keep yourself safe and at a high level, and just keep the pain train going. We have one more Super Saiyan God to show off. We've got Vegeta Super Saiyan God. Just like Goku, you can only advance to this level via God Key Ritual. If your power rating is at 0 at the end of combat, lower your MP to level 1. You may not redirect damage to allies. He has a constant combat power. Styled attacks you perform are considered Vegeta-named cards. Your attacks deal +2 life cards of damage for each Vegeta-named attack you perform this combat. So anyone that knows much about Vegeta decks in this game knows like Vegeta Freestyle is a pretty popular deck, which is just going to have a bunch of Vegeta-named attacks in its hand. It's going to use like Lurking to get 3 more or whatever, and just kind of set up an extended amount of attacks with Vegeta in the name. So even if you're just doing that, this card can do +2, then +4, then +6, as you kind of push through the cards in your hand. But what happens much less often in this game is Vegeta being played in a style, or at least prior to NZ. Most of the decks that Vegeta were played in were freestyle Vegeta decks. We wanted to give players who wanted to play as Vegeta a little bit more option as to where they can plug him into. So now all of your styled attacks are considered Vegeta named as well. So obvious comparisons then with how he works with all the Vegeta name cards. You can do this in Saiyan, have a huge Saiyan hand, and all of those are now Vegeta cards, which then stack the damage. You can play it in Red, which gets some good energy support. There's just a bunch of things you can do to kind of maximize that. Even if you're not playing any actual Vegeta name cards, this card just makes every attack you perform do +2 as long as they're styled. +2, +2, +2, and exponential growth. There's a huge amount of power that this Vegeta puts out. He drops power stages a little bit more than Goku, but not as quite as far down. So his sort of bracket is just a little bit different. But this is a very aggressive take on the kind of get to God and do something with it, where Goku's a little more passive and like safer at staying on his level. It's more likely that your Vegeta will get to 0 and then have to level down at end of combat. But just like Vegeta is kind of known for, Vegeta doesn't want to take 2 turns to kill you. He wants to get here and he's just going to like turn on the fireworks and see what happens. If you get to this level, it's a lot of damage is on the table for sure.
Yeah. As you stated, this card works great in Saiyan decks or any decks that draw a bunch of cards. It also works well in any decks that have cards that stay on the table to be used multiple times. Things like red repeating flares are incredible in this. Any of your multiple use attacks are great. The Vegeta name cards being part of the stack too means you can kind of mix and match. You can have a style deck with the Vegeta synergies, or you can just as you said, not play any of the Vegeta name cards, and they still are incredibly good for this level. Um, this is kind of a get there and kill you MP. If you get to God Key, or if you get to Super Saiyan God Vegeta, you want to kill them that turn, or at least you want to inflict 30, 40 cards of damage in one turn, and it's very doable. Um, the big combo with this is the card called Blue Trap Strike, which is the deck seen some play here recently, and being able to use Trap Strike 5 times, as you can guess, with the Vegeta power, makes it quite an effective card. You're gonna shell out a lot of damage, and that's what Vegeta likes to do. He likes to put that damage out, so this is very on theme. So the next stack we're going to talk about, it's a 1 to 3 stack. It is King Vegeta. The level 1 says before the first turn of the game, you can search your life deck for a copy of Powerball, which we'll get into a little bit later, and place it into play. His constant combat power is whenever you play a Great Ape Uzaru, which is a new ally that we will talk about shortly, or a Saiyan Heritage ally, you may raise your anger 1. So.
Then he has a level 2 here. King Vegeta is your main personality, and your Saiyan Heritage allies, except for Stellar Shield Jr., this guy cares about his actual Saiyans, can take control of combat even if this personality is at 2 power stages above 0 or higher. If one of your Saiyan Heritage allies, again, except Stellar Shield Jr., would be removed from the game, they're discarded instead. And then finally,
the level 3, notably this is in Z, is a focus physical for +4. If successful, choose up to one of your Saiyan Heritage allies, except Cell or Cell Jr., in your discard pile and place it into play at 5 stages above 0. For the remainder of combat, your allies can take control of combat even if this personality is at 2 stages or more above 0. So, Derek, you want to give us kind of an overview of the stack?
yeah, real quick, I'm going to get into Powerball real fast. This card is just pretty important to the like what the deck is trying to do. So I'm going to cover this one first. You remove a Saiyan Heritage personality you control, except for Stellar Shield Jr., from the game and replace it with a Great Ape Uzaru from your Sensei deck at its highest power stage. Attach this card to it. Discard this card when the personality it is attached to has its power level reduced to 0. When this card is discarded, return the Great Ape Uzaru to your Sensei deck and replace the original personality at 5 stages above 0. So, King Vegeta is Saiyan ally focused deck that wants, again, like I said, to care very specifically about actual Saiyans. Before the game starts, you get to have your Powerball in play, so you can kind of get right into going into the ape. King Vegeta himself can turn into an ape, as can any of the other Saiyan Heritage allies that you control. Whenever you play one of them, whenever you play an Uzaru from your deck, or any Saiyan Heritage ally, you get an anger. So King Vegeta is going to level up into his 2 and 3 pretty quickly. This level is sort of just like a landing. There are a couple of these that kind of exist in the kind of NZ design space where the level 1 is sort of a vehicle to get you into what your deck wants to do. And this is definitely one of those examples. He just starts you out with the thing your deck is trying to be built around and rewards you for doing so. His level 2 then is where he really starts to do the thing. Your Saiyan allies can take control of combat even if he's 2 above 0. or more. So he's kind of like the sort of Bojack style where your allies are just kind of always on. And then if you would lose them, if they're removed from the game, they're just discarded instead, which makes them, of course, easier to get back into play, to kind of keep cycling them through the game so you can keep doing more of your Uzaru shenanigans. And then finally, if you do get to your level 3, uh, 2 really, in all honesty, is like one of the places this guy really shines. Just having your allies always on is huge. As we've seen from the Bojack deck, historically that deck was always good. And not having to worry about what power level you're at for your allies to be effective is very, very strong in an ally deck. But if you do get up to your level 3, Z does mean that he hits for 2, gets hit for 2 back, so he's pretty resilient. But he has an attack for +4. If successful, you can get one of your Sand Heritage allies back and put it into play. It is from your discard pile, which then combos nice with the 2 that said if it was removed, it's discarded, so you can kind of recover them now. And then your your allies, period, not just Sand Heritage only, now can take control of combat even if he's at 2 or more above 0. So this level is he gets to kind of get a little bit more into the action himself, a little bit more into the forefront, throwing some attacks of his own, and then bringing his kind of army of Saiyans back into play. He works, of course, obviously really well with the ally strategies. The Uzarus themselves have a little bit of play with this deck, so I'm going to let Nick cover those here as we go into this next card, and we'll kind of finish the discussion on this when we get there.
Okay, so Great Ape Buzaro number 1. Of course, he is also all in Z. This card may only be played from your Sensei deck. So this is usually your Powerball target. You play this in your Sensei deck, and this is when you Powerball one of your personalities. This is who comes out. It's an energy attack doing 8 cards and costs 3 stages to perform. And if King Vegeta is your MP, this power may be used a second time this combat. So bringing him out, hitting for 2 energies for 16, being in Z, it's a strong effect. It's a strong ally.
And notably, since Powerball starts in play, you could, if you wanted to, enter combat Powerball, put Great Ape Uzario into play, replacing your King Vegeta himself. Just immediately turn him into his kind of monkey form and just start laying the beat down that way. That's an option you have available to you. Or you can, of course, wait until you get one of your own allies, and then turn them into the ape so that you can kind of layer things that way. It's notable that that's a slightly better way to do it, because if you do Powerball first and you Powerball remove King Vegeta from the game, put this guy into play, he's not into play to get the anger that you should get for playing an Uzaru. So if he is going to ape out on his own, he doesn't get his kind of level 1 effect, but he is a good way to just like immediately turn on a really powerful turn 1 action. But there's another ape you can play as well. Great Ape Uzaru number 2. This is a physical attack doing +5 power stages of damage, and then if successful, discard an ally or non-combat card in play. This one, as you can see, doesn't mention the Sensei deck and can just be played like a regular ally. You don't have to like transform into this one. You just have these in your deck. So if you're just any deck, is physical for +5, it's pretty good, and if successful, discarding a card as the Uzaru tromps around and just things get in the way, they die. Just a good ally, period. The Uzarus, number 1 and number 2, because there's kind of an army of Saiyans, they function like the Cell Juniors in that you can play more than one copy of them. You're allowed to have 3 of the level 1 in your Sensei deck and up to 3 of the of the number 2 in your main deck. So you can have 6 total Great Apes in your combined deck experience. And so, as you can see with the King Vegeta's previous levels here, like his level 2 letting you just immediately take over combat with your Saiyans if you were to use, say, South Kai Sensei and use it to bring in one of these level 2s or the number 2s as your kind of first ally. You have like a giant physical attack that just can be used right away and can clear some stuff off the table. You can use it to even just like Vic Drills or your Inviteds right off rip. You can get rid of that way. You can use the Powerball to then transform into one of these guys. Something fun that you can do, it's a little bit of a flavor break, but something you can do is Uzaru's with Powerball just replace any, say, inherited personality. So you could do kind of a fun combo string of using like South Kai to bring in Uzaru number 2, and then enter combat, attack with this, uh, and then use your Powerball to then replace this guy with this one, and then have 2 more attacks from the kind of same ally, which is a pretty fun little stack of things to pull off. It does take a little bit of effort to line up, especially from your level 1, where you don't get to just do. Uh, your allies do have to be, you have to be at 2 or 1 or 0 to use them. It's not until you get to that level 2 to do that. But it's pretty easy to get enough anger to level up to that level 2 and start using these guys.
Yeah, so the King Vegeta ally deck is obviously very interesting. It's very good at chilling out damage. Uh, One of the big things with those Zaros is that the Saiyan allies aren't always the strongest allies. So, having the monkeys that can get in there and actually chill out some damage is pretty useful. Broly from set 2 is another incredibly useful Saiyan ally. And notably, when you get to level 3, he does not, he doesn't care specifically about it being Saiyan heritage anymore. So, if you want to just play the generic villain allies with him, you can. But the flavor of the level 2 is on point with some of the rogue personalities like Vegeta, like NZ Broly, and personalities like that. So there's a lot of value here for King Vegeta. He's very good at getting to level 2 and fairly good at getting to level 3, and he can absolutely shell out some damage. It's definitely a cool Saiyan ally deck, which has never really been a thing before. So
Yeah, and there's a couple more cards that were printed to kind of further his like invasion archetype. And the first one of them is Begin the Invasion. You can search your life deck or discard pile for a Saiyan Heritage personality other than Cell or Cell Jr. You're going to see that occur a lot. This package was like very much intended to be the actual Saiyan army is the guys you're looking for. But you get to put one of those allies into play at 3 above 0. Then, if King Vegeta is your main personality, all of your Saiyans power up to full. And then you get a free anger off of it. So if you're the level 1 Vegeta, or King Vegeta, he can get an anger off of playing a Saiyan Heritage guy. Plus, this gives you an anger and gives you a ton of stages on all of your guys. So that's very welcome. Stages are good. And with his level 2 making your guys get discarded instead of RFG'd, this triggers pretty consistently. It's if you have allies who you've lost, it's pretty likely they're in your discard pile, and you can bring them back with this.
yeah, notably this card is based off Gathering of Heroes, which is a very common ally strategy card. Um, if you read this closely, it actually does not power King Vegeta to his highest power stage, which is also useful in ally decks. Not having your MP at his highest stage is a very useful effect. Um,
Yeah, good catch.
so what this card is it's just an upgraded Gathering of Heroes for the Vegeta deck, and it's very useful. The anger is also super beneficial because you be at 3 anger and just get them on level 1, just get to level 2 just immediately. So yeah, this is a card and you're gonna want to play in your King Vegeta decks for sure.
And you get Nappa with hair. I mean, that's just cool in general.
So the next card is March of the Great Apes. This is another combat. So attach a Great Ape Uzaru you control to your opponent's main personality. While attached, its text box is considered to say, when entering combat, discard one of your non-combat's battlegrounds or locations. If you cannot, destroy the top 2 cards of your life deck. Discard this card when your opponent's opponent's power level reaches 0. So if you are more of an energy deck, which sometimes you are in this, you can really go either way with the ally strategy here, especially in Saiyan. You can, if you're not planning on doing a lot of power stages to your opponent, you can get quite a few little effects off this card. Um, when entering combat, making your opponent discard one of their non-combats is super useful effect. And if they can't, they just mill two, and like that's perfectly fine, right? Like the apes are doing all, they're stomping around causing damage, and even if it's just 2 cards, we'll take 2 cards when entering combat. That's perfectly reasonable. So
Yeah, you kind of mentioned it exactly. This card is very much flavor. You just stick one of your Uzarus in their city, and they just cause havoc until they can get rid of it. And as long as they're not at 0, they're just going to keep suffering from that. This card takes a little bit more kind of dedication to play. It's a little less like obviously good than some of the other stuff. Like begin the invasion is just gathering of heroes, but better, which is good. Obviously, gathering of heroes was already a played card. This card is a little bit more of like a gimmick, but if you can kind of set up a couple of these, it's not one of those two where it's not like you can only do this once. So if you were to pull off a couple of these and have just a couple of your great apes just like tromping around, you can really clear some stuff out. It just handles a board state. If it doesn't, they're just milling cards two at a time. It's pretty good there. You can dig this then into further like a blue. The blue sort of anger, I'm biting drill and spec ops drill, where you can kind of build this kind of blue mill deck that's based around you just stick some apes over there. You throw your energy attacks, so you keep your stages up, or you keep their stages up. You're not hitting their power stages, and just cause some havoc that way. It just allows for some creative decks based around doing something weird with your allies. And then we have one final combat card to go with this kind of archetype. You can search your discard pile for up to one Saiyan Heritage personality and then add it to your Sensei deck. If you did not, you may place a Powerball from your discard pile into play. So this one is good because the Uzarus themselves, the number ones, go back to your Sensei deck when Powerball leaves play. But if they just get like removed or discarded on their own, they're just gone. And so this card lets you put it back, so you can kind of repeat the summoning of your Saiyan army out of your Sensei deck. And then if you don't have one of the monkeys to bring back to your Sensei deck, you can just go get a Powerball instead to kind of then keep going with that strategy. You quite literally continue bringing out more of the Saiyan Uzarus to create some havoc.
Yeah, this continues the theme of, the monkeys just pop in and out and destroying things, and, you can bring one back or you can create a new, basically. So lots of options here. Anything that has multiple modes is usually more useful. So giving you some simple options is good. Your opponent's obviously going to try to get rid of your allies when you're playing an allied deck, so just returning one is pretty useful. It's the Uzaro strategy is a really interesting strategy. It seemed to be fairly powerful so far. So anytime you can get all the stuff going, all the parts moving in the right direction, you can get a lot of value there. Okay, so kind of to go with it, this is a new Saiyan ally that was created. It's called Saiyan Invaders. Constant combat power. Whenever your opponent uses a card effect to discard any of your allies, they must discard this ally first. Saiyan Invaders does not need to be in control of combat to use this power. So obviously this ally doesn't really do anything. It's a protection ally to protect your monkeys and your Broly and your Vegeta, your stronger allies that have effects you want. When your opponent has one of those card effects that's discarding one ally in play, which a lot of cards do. There's a lot of oops, crushing dives, orange right blast effects type floating around. So this is going to force your opponent into answering this first, which is obviously what you want, because again, that's all this card really does. You're going to play this in your King Vegeta strategies as a way to protect your other allies. Notice that it does not say Saiyan Heritage allies, which means it does protect everybody, which is great. And it is also Saiyan Heritage. So if if you're playing your Saiyan deck and you need to be able to use a Saiyan Heritage only card, and this guy has some stages, you can do it with them. So there's definitely a benefit there. Overall, this is, like I said, this is an ally protection card. It's kind of like Jewel is for the hero version. A lot of your ally decks are going to play this card. It does pair well with, even card effects like Saiyan Teamwork Blast that we showed you in the last video. This can do Saiyan Teamwork Blast twice for 7 cards. So this is where you want to be.
Yeah, you mentioned it with Jewel. This is word for word. This is Jewel, but for villains. It is, and Jewel, as we know from hero decks, is a pretty playable card, keeping your important allies safe. This one just sticks around and does that. You can play this in Cell Junior to keep your Cell Junior safe. You can play it in a Saiyan deck, of course. A nice thing that you can do with this, being that it is Saiyan Heritage, is this card is a solid target for turning into an Uzaru right away if you want to too. If you need sort of like one more access to a big dual attack kind of guy, this is one guy who can do that for you. It's not a particularly flashy card otherwise, but that's sort of the point. The idea is that it is just here and is going to be a thorn in your opponent's side for dealing with your other cards while this one's still around. We talked in 2 videos ago now with the set 2 review. The final card that we looked at was Frieza Evil Mastermind, which was a preview card we mentioned for the next set here. And it was a level 1. The NZ3 here contains a 2, 3, 4, and 5, giving us a full new 1 through 5 Frieza stack between the 2 sets. As you remember from that first one, he got to power up to full if there were no allies in play, and then he got to remove stuff in play after taking a damage. So he just kind of cared about keeping the riffraff off the table and getting advantage for doing so. This stack will kind of continue to do a little more of that. As we can see here, if it's in your MP stack, you cannot win by MPPV. If you advance personality level via this power, set your anger to 0. One of the things we'll see with this stack is that Frieza is very famous for transforming forms, and this stack definitely does that. And it does it quite quickly, too. So we wanted this to be a stack based on using all of Frieza's levels and not just rushing to 5 and trying to win that way. So no MPPV here. But he has a physical attack doing 5 life cards of damage or stops an attack. If there are no allies in play at the end of combat, after you've used this power, and Frieza is your MP, advance your MP1 level. So you do have to use this attack to level up, but there doesn't have to be no allies at the time when you use the attack. There could be allies in play at that point, and as long as you use this in combat and get rid of them by the end of combat, you can still get the level off of it. You get an Omni block on your level 2, which is awesome. We've talked about how having a block on your MP is good. This one's an Omni, so that's even better. And thematically, this is Frieza on Namek, and Namek's the Namek Saga. Frieza's whole thing was trying to get the Dragon Balls to wish for immortality. So this is a physical attack that does 5 life, which is, if none of it is prevented, is exactly enough to capture Dragon Ball. So a little bit of flavor there too.
Yeah, the level 2 is quite good. Anytime you have attack or stops an attack is very powerful effect. Any deck that doesn't play allies at all, this is just an automatic, improvement, automatic advanced level at the end of the combat, which is useful. Very strong level 2. Even if you're gonna mix and match with Trunk Saga, this is the level 2 you want to be on. This one's quite good. So. As we move to his level 3, Frieza Divided. Obviously, this is a kind of a gimmick to getting cut in half by Trunks. So his constant combat power is allies cannot use their personality powers. Your attacks deal plus 3 cards of damage and gain, if successful, raise your anger 2 and discard an ally in play. So this is Frieza's kind of anti-ally level. There are reasons to just play a 1 to 3 stack and use this as your final level. And if you do that, your attacks do a plus 3 life card and gain, if successful, raise your anger 2 is quite powerful. Otherwise, if you are continuing the level hopping, all of your attacks raising your anger 2 is great. It's an easy way to get boosted up and advanced levels. Plus 3 is a large modifier, and discarding your opponent's allies is always beneficial. If anytime you're removing your opponent's cards as just a part of your card effects, it's very strong.
Yes, and just turning them off in general is good too. It's been kind of obvious with this stack, I would hope, but this Frieza definitely doesn't want to be using his own allies. Frieza wants to be in combat on his own. So do note there at the end, discard an ally in play. If you were the only one who had an ally, you do have to discard your own. So even more evidence as to why you really shouldn't be playing allies with this stack. But like Nick said, all of its powers very strong. Good at just camping here as your final level. Good at getting to the next one. The stack aesthetically here, as we've noticed from one being from the Broly movie, which is newer as far as like release, but it is the earliest like timing for Frieza. It is when he was very young. Then Namek was level 2 into the level 3 here. We're going to kind of continue through the history of Frieza into this level 4. Frieza Resurrected. If you advance, if this card's in your stack, you can't win by MPPV. And if you advance a level with this power, you set your anger to 0, just like the level 2 had. This one has a defense shield. It stops the first unstopped attack performed against you in combat. Your opponent's focused attacks deal a maximum of 1 power stage and 1 life card of damage. And at the end of combat, if this personality is at its highest power stage, advance a personality level. So you get a defense shield to stop the first any attack. So still going with the kind of Omni from level 2. But now it's a defense shield. Notably, with the rules with defense shields, that can still be broken by like a focused attack, things like that. So keep that in mind. But this kind of makes up for it in that their focus attacks deal a maximum of 1 stage and 1 life. So even if your defense shield gets popped, the focused attacks don't really matter. So that's good there. And then at the end of combat, if you're at full, you're just going to go up a level. This is kind of an important strategy to this particular card. Getting your keeping your power level high is important. As you can see from 10.6, he's in a high bracket there. That's H, so he's way up there, and it's pretty easy to get here pretty quick. But you'll just want to make sure that you've got some stage gain in there where necessary to keep going, or at least with enough anger to just level yourself naturally. Because of course you can still do that too. If you just get to 5 anger, you can just go up. But as long as you aren't at 0 or aren't at less than full, you just get to hop to the next stage.
Yeah, and with this card, especially with the level 3, gaining 2 anger on all your successful attacks, you can actually level a good percentage of the time after your opponent's kind of ran out of steam. And so, you might only have to block 1 attack and you'll still be at full and you'll just hop right up to 5 after that. So, very easy to do.
And then speaking of 5,
All right, so 5 is Golden Frieza, or Frieza Golden in this, as it would be. So Frieza has a power kind of like the gods. At the beginning of your attack or attacks phase, if your MP is 3 or less power stages above 0, lower your MP 2 personality levels and set your anger to 0. So unlike the gods who de-level at the end of combat, Frieza's power is a little less sustainable. So if he at your attack or attacks phase is at 10 million or less, he actually de-levels to level 3. It does not matter what level 3 you're on, he will de-level to either. So power level wise, if you look at what he's kind of got to offer, he actually stays in I longer than every other personality. So basically, he is in I unless he is de-leveling. So that's a super beneficial thing. Frieza can absolutely pack on the damage. With that, his power is when you're in combat, draw a card. Gives you more attacks, more ways to do damage, and damage from your attacks cannot be prevented. So you're attacking in I, and your damage can't be prevented. You're going to be able to do a lot of damage with Golden Frieza.
yeah, the damage piles up a lot just from table alone. Um, Hopping back down to the level 3 is you know uh, a hindrance per se, but I'm going to cover this a little bit in just a sec. But it still kind of actually feels pretty nice to even do so. But this one with Frieza, he does level a little more easily down than the gods do. But Frieza is a little more vain, a little more um, irritable when things aren't going his way. He gets pretty upset, and so if he gets, as long as he is in control, is you know the one putting the pressure on, he's happy. But if you turn it around, turn the tables on him, get him down a little bit, he starts to get frustrated and lives back down. But if you go back down to the 3, again, your allies are turned, or your opponent's allies are turned back off, or all of them are, I guess. Your attacks go back to dealing an additional +3 life, which is great because you were on I before, so you're already doing a bunch of damage there. You're getting the damage modifier back here, and then you're getting more levels again here. So if you've got a couple left to do, you can get some extra anger that way. And it's pretty easy in that case. If you do line it up right, say you ended combat on the 5, went into another one, through an attack or whatever, then get leveled down to 3, throw a couple of attacks to level yourself back up to 4, combat ends, and you just immediately go back to your 5. The sort of play cycle of this deck is a lot of cycling between 3, 4, 5 as your anger levels fluctuate and your power level. You hit this golden Frieza level pretty consistently every combat or every couple combats. It's just kind of managing when that's going to line up, when it's going to hit, and while you get to this level, maximizing the output you can do with it. That is, however, the final card in NZ3. We have reviewed all 50 of them for you guys with this one. Thanks for sticking around for both parts if you have. If this is your first part, go watch part 1. And then stay tuned for set 4. That one is called Colossal Calamity, and it's a big one. There's a lot going on in that set, so we're excited to cover that one for you next. Until next time, thanks for hanging out.